They called me a gold digger. Not once, not twice. For 30 years, that's what his family thought I was. What they whispered behind my back. What they made sure I knew every time I walked into their home. The girl from the wrong side of town who trapped their son. The woman who was only there for the money. The outsider who would never really be family. I'm Helena. I'm 58 years old, and I'm about to tell you a story about assumptions, about class, about what happens when the people who look down on you turn out to be completely wrong about everything. But before I start, I need to know you're really here with me. Drop your city or country in the comments right now. Tell me where you're watching from. And please, hit that subscribe button because I share stories like this every single day. Real stories, true stories. Stories about women who were underestimated and what happened when the truth finally came out. This story takes place over 3 decades. It involves a family that thought they knew exactly who I was the moment they met me. A mother-in-law who made her opinion clear from day one. Sisters-in-law who treated me like I was invisible unless they were reminding me I didn't belong. And a husband who loved me but never quite defended me the way he should have. For 30 years, I heard the word, sometimes whispered, sometimes said right to my face, sometimes just implied with a look or comment about how lucky I was, how convenient my timing had been, how interesting it was that I'd ended up with their son. Golddigger. They were so sure, so confident, so absolutely certain they had me figured out. They were wrong about everything. But it took 30 years for them to find out just how wrong. I'm not going to tell you yet what happened, how the tables turned, where everyone ended up, because this story deserves to be told from the beginning, from the moment I met him, from the first time I felt his mother's cold stare, from the first family dinner where I realized they'd already decided who I was before I'd even said a word. What I will tell you is this. Sometimes the people who judge you the hardest are the ones who understand the least. Sometimes the family that accuses you of wanting their money is the family that never learned the value of money at all. And sometimes the woman they call a gold digger turns out to be the only person in the room who actually knows how to build something real. Stay with me, because this story is about more than money. It's about dignity, about proving yourself to people who've already made up their minds, about 30 years of being made to feel small by people who thought they were better than you. And it's about what happens when those people realize they were wrong. Drop your comments, tell me where you're from, subscribe for more stories, because this one is just getting started. I met Preston Caldwell in September 1994 at a charity gala in downtown Chicago. I was 28 years old, wearing a borrowed dress, and working the event as part of the catering staff coordination team. I wasn't a guest. I was there to make sure the guests had everything they needed. Drinks, appetizers, seamless service. I worked for the event planning company that had been hired to make the evening perfect for people who could afford $1,000 a plate dinners. Preston was 30, tall, handsome in that effortless way that comes from never having worried about anything. He wore his tuxedo like it was jeans. Comfortable. Easy. Like he'd been born in formal wear. He started talking to me during the cocktail hour. Asked my name, where I was from, what I did. I told him I worked in marketing during the day and picked up event coordination work on weekends for extra money. He seemed genuinely interested. Not the way some wealthy men looked at service staff, but actually interested. "You're beautiful," he said. Simple, direct, like it was a fact. I laughed it off, told him he should get back to his table, that his date was probably wondering where he'd gone. "I don't have a date," he said. "I came alone. I hate these things, but my mother insists. Family obligation." We talked for 20 minutes. He asked for my number. I hesitated, gave it to him anyway, certain he'd never call. He called the next day. We dated for 6 months, and in those 6 months, I learned exactly who Preston Caldwell was. The grandson of Preston Caldwell Sr., who'd founded Caldwell Manufacturing in 1952. The son of Preston Caldwell Jr., who'd run the company until selling it would make the family tens of millions of dollars. the heir to old Chicago money, country clubs, private schools, summers in Lake Geneva, winters in Aspen. I came from something very different. My parents, Miguel and Rosa Vasquez, had immigrated from Mexico in 1963. My father worked construction. My mother cleaned houses. They'd saved every penny to send me to state school. I graduated with a degree in marketing and a mountain of student loans. Worked my way up to marketing coordinator at a mid-sized firm making $32,000 a year. Preston didn't care about any of that. At least, Preston didn't seem to care. He introduced me to his friends, took me to nice restaurants, talked about a future together like it was obvious, like our different backgrounds didn't matter. I believed him. Maybe I wanted to believe him. Maybe I was naive. Maybe I was just tired of struggling, and the idea of someone who thought I was enough, exactly as I was, felt like something I couldn't let go of. He proposed in March 1995, took me to dinner at an expensive restaurant I couldn't pronounce the name of, got down on a knee and asked me to marry him. The ring was beautiful. A family heirloom, he said, his grandmother's. He'd asked his mother's permission to use it. I said yes. And that's when I met the Caldwells. Preston took me to the family estate in Lake Forest the following weekend. A mansion, really, not a house. Circular driveway, columns, the kind of place I'd only seen in movies. My stomach hurt the entire drive there. "They're going to love you," Preston kept saying. "Don't worry." But I was worried, because I knew what I looked like walking into that house. The daughter of immigrants, no pedigree, no family money, no connections. Just a girl who'd caught their son's attention and was now wearing his grandmother's ring. Preston's mother, Constance, answered the door herself. Tall, thin, elegant in a way that seemed almost cold. She looked at me the way you'd look at something that had been tracked in on someone's shoe. "So you're Helena," she said. Not a question, a statement, an assessment. "Yes, Mrs. Caldwell. It's so nice to meet you." She didn't smile, didn't extend a hand, just stepped aside to let us in. Preston's father was in the study. Preston Jr., older version of Preston, same ease, same confidence, but where Preston was warm, his father was distant. He shook my hand, said hello, went back to his newspaper. Preston's sister Blair arrived within minutes, 32 years old, blonde, sharp. She looked me up and down like I was a piece of furniture she was deciding whether to keep. "Where did you say you met?" Blair asked. Sweet voice, knife underneath. "A charity gala," Preston said. "Helena was working the event." "Working it," Blair's smile didn't reach her eyes. "How industrious." Dinner was worse. Long table, crystal, china I was afraid to touch. Constance at one end, Preston's father at the other. Blair across from me, watching. Preston's younger brother, Vaughn, barely looked up from his plate. The questions started immediately. Where did I go to school? What did my parents do? Where did I grow up? What neighborhood? What church? Every question designed to confirm what they'd already decided. I answered honestly. State school, construction and house cleaning. South Side. Catholic. Watch them process each answer. Watch the conclusion form behind their polite faces. After dinner, I excused myself to use the restroom. On my way back, I heard them. The study door was cracked open. Constance's voice clear and cold. "Preston, I know you think you're in love, but you need to think clearly. That girl is after your money. She's a gold digger. Look at her background. Look at her family. She saw an opportunity and she took it. Mother, that's not fair. You don't even know her." "I know enough. Girls like that don't marry men like you for love. They marry for security, for status, for money. I won't watch you make this mistake." Blair's voice joined in. "She probably planned the whole thing. Working that gala, getting your attention, the borrowed dress, the whole working-class girl with a heart of gold routine. It's textbook." I stood in the hallway frozen, hand over my mouth to keep from making a sound. Listen to them dissect me. Decide who I was, what I wanted, why I was there. Preston defended me. To his credit, he defended me. But his voice was tired, like he'd had this conversation before about other things, like he knew he wouldn't win. I walked back into that dining room with a smile on my face, finished dessert, said all the right things, let Preston drive me home, kissed him goodnight, went inside my small apartment and cried. Because I knew that no matter what I did, no matter how I acted, no matter how much I loved Preston, his family had decided. On day one, before I'd even walked through the door, I was a gold digger, and nothing I could say or do would ever change their minds. I should have walked away then, should have given back the ring, should have told Preston I couldn't marry into a family that saw me that way. But I didn't, because I loved him, and I thought love would be enough. I was wrong about that too.
We got married in June 1995. Small ceremony despite the Caldwell's wealth. That was my choice. I knew a big wedding would become a theater for their disapproval. Better to keep it intimate, manageable, less opportunity for Constance to make her feelings known. She made them known anyway. The Caldwells attended, all of them. Constance wore black. Not navy, not dark gray, black, to a June wedding. She sat in the front row with a face like she was attending a funeral. Maybe in her mind she was. The death of her son's promising future. Blair was her maid of honor's opposite. My cousin Maria stood beside me in a lavender dress, beaming. Blair sat next to Constance, whispering. I saw them looking at my parents, at my aunts and uncles who'd driven from 3 states away, at the modest church, the simple reception, watched them cataloging everything that proved I wasn't good enough. Preston held my hand through all of it, kissed me at the altar, told me he loved me, told me his family would come around, that they just needed time. I wanted to believe him. We moved into a condo in Lincoln Park. Preston's trust fund paid for it. I contributed what I could from my marketing salary, but it was clear whose money was really funding our life. I tried not to think about that too much. Tried not to hear Constance's voice every time Preston paid for something. She's after your money. I kept working, got promoted to senior marketing coordinator in 1996, started making $42,000 a year. It felt like a fortune to me. Preston thought it was sweet. His family thought it was pointless. Why does she still work? I overheard Blair asking Preston at Thanksgiving 1997. It's not like you need the money. It's embarrassing, like you can't provide for your wife. Preston didn't have a good answer. Because the truth was, I worked because I needed to. Needed my own money, my own identity, my own proof that I wasn't what they said I was. The holidays were the worst. Every Thanksgiving at the Lake Forest estate, every Christmas, every Easter brunch. Mandatory attendance, mandatory smiling, mandatory pretending I didn't hear the comments. Constance perfected the art of the subtle insult. Helena, you've gained weight. Must be nice not having to worry about how you look for work. Said with a smile, in front of everyone. I was 3 months pregnant with our first child. Blair was less subtle. Christmas 1998, she pulled out family heirlooms, jewelry, china, silver. These pieces go to Caldwell women, she announced. Real Caldwells. Looked right at me, made sure I understood. I would never be real to them. I had 2 children in those first 10 years. Emma in 1999, Michael in 2002. I thought becoming a mother might change how they saw me. It didn't. If anything, it got worse. At least she's good for something, Constance said when Emma was born. Not to me, never to me, but loud enough for me to hear. She's locked him in now, Blair said when I was pregnant with Michael. 2 kids. He'll never leave. As if I'd planned my children as some kind of trap. As if I hadn't loved them desperately from the moment I knew they existed. As if every part of my life with Preston was a calculated scheme, rather than just living, just loving, just trying to build a family despite his family's hatred. Preston worked at a wealth management firm, a position secured through family connections. He made decent money, around $100,000 a year, but the real wealth was still the trust fund, the investments his grandfather had set up, The safety net that meant Preston never had to worry, never had to hustle, never had to prove himself the way I did every single day. In 2005, everything changed for the Caldwells. The family company, Caldwell Manufacturing, was sold. $50 million. Preston's father had been preparing for the sale for years. When it finally happened, the family became truly wealthy. Not just comfortable, rich. The 3 Caldwell children each received approximately $8 million. Preston deposited his into investments, upgraded our condo to a house in Wilmette, bought a new car, started talking about early retirement like it was inevitable. I watched the money arrive and felt a sick certainty in my stomach because I knew what they were thinking, what they'd always been thinking, that I'd been waiting for this, that this was why I married him, that finally, after 10 years of playing the long game, I was getting my payout. Blair said it out loud at the family celebration dinner. "Well, Helena, you've certainly been patient. Must feel good knowing it paid off." I didn't respond. Had learned by then that responding only made it worse. Just smiled, excused myself, went to the bathroom and stared at my reflection. 39 years old, 2 children, 10 years married, a decade of this. And it wasn't getting better. It was getting worse. Because now there was real money. Money they could imagine me stealing. Money they could watch me spending. Money that proved, in their minds, that they'd been right about me all along. I went back to that table, ate my dinner, kissed Preston goodnight, drove home in the car his trust fund had bought, walked into the house his inheritance had upgraded, put my children in bed in rooms his family's money had furnished, and I made a decision. Quietly, privately, the kind of decision you don't announce, because announcing it gives people the power to stop you. I would never depend on Caldwell money. Not really. Not in the way that mattered. I would build something of my own. Something they couldn't take credit for. Something they couldn't say came from their son, their family, their wealth. I didn't know what it would be yet, but I knew I had to do it. Because 10 years of being called a gold digger while living off someone else's money was killing some part of myself I'd buried to survive their judgment. I was 39 years old, and I was just starting to realize that the only way to prove I wasn't after their money was to make my own. The next year, I started.
In March 2006, I was laid off. The marketing firm where I'd worked for 12 years downsized. Last hired, first fired. Budget cuts. Nothing personal, just business. I came home that Tuesday afternoon, walked into our Wilmette house, and told Preston I'd lost my job. He barely looked up from his laptop. "That's probably for the best. The commute was killing you anyway. And the kids need you home more. Emma's 7, Michael's 4. This is actually good timing." Good timing. As if losing my income, my identity, my proof that I was more than what his family thought I was, could ever be good timing. "I'm going to find something else," I said. "Sure, eventually, but take some time. We don't need the money. Relax a little." We don't need the money. He was right. We didn't. His trust fund plus the inheritance from the company sale meant we were more than comfortable. My $48,000 salary was negligible in comparison. Pocket change, barely worth the effort. But I needed it. Needed something that was mine, some proof I could contribute, some evidence I wasn't just living off Caldwell wealth exactly the way they said I always planned to. I updated my resume that night, started applying to marketing positions, but every application felt hollow. I was 40 years old, been out of full-time work for years before this job, 2 kids, gaps in my resume, no degree from a prestigious school, no connections, no network that mattered. The rejection emails came quickly, or worse, no emails at all, just silence. I spent 3 months applying, getting nowhere, watching Preston go about his life, working his wealth management job that his father had secured for him, coming home to a wife who was suddenly exactly what his family had always said, unemployed, dependent, living off his money. In June, I stopped applying, not because I gave up on working, but because I realized I was approaching this wrong. Nobody was going to hire me. Fine, I'd hire myself. I'd been watching the business world shift. Digital marketing was exploding. Social media was becoming essential. Small businesses needed help navigating this new landscape, but couldn't afford big agencies. There was a gap in the market, and I had 12 years of marketing experience and nothing to lose. I registered an LLC in July 2006, Vasquez Consulting, not Caldwell, Vasquez. My name, my business, my identity separate from his family and their money and their judgment. I started small, reached out to small business owners, offered digital marketing services, website optimization, social media strategy, email campaigns, charged reasonable rates, built a portfolio one client at a time. Preston noticed around September, "What are you doing all day on the computer?" "Consulting, marketing consulting. I have 3 clients." "Oh," he smiled, indulgent, like I'd told him I'd taken up scrapbooking. "That's great, honey. Keeping busy. That's good for you." Keeping busy. Not building a business, not creating something real, just keeping busy, staying occupied, a hobby to fill the empty hours. I didn't correct him, didn't argue, just kept working. By the end of 2006, I had 8 clients and had made $22,000. Not much, but it was mine, money I'd earned, income that had nothing to do with Preston or his family or their wealth. I put it in a separate account, didn't tell Preston the amounts, didn't share the details. When he asked how my consulting thing was going, I said, "Fine, good, keeping me busy." He never asked for specifics, never wanted to see client work, never expressed real interest. It was my hobby, my little project, something to make me feel useful while he provided the real income that mattered. The Caldwells didn't even know I was working. At Christmas 2006, Constance asked what I'd been doing with my time now that I wasn't working anymore. "I'm consulting," I said, "digital marketing for small businesses." "How nice." Constance's smile didn't reach her eyes. "A little side project. How enterprising." Blair laughed, actually laughed. "Mom, she's not working. She's playing consultant. It's cute." I didn't respond. Had learned that defending myself only invited more mockery. Just smiled, changed the subject, let them think whatever they wanted to think. But while they were dismissing me, I was building. 2007 was better. I refined my services, raised my rates, started getting referrals. By year end, I had 15 clients and made $68,000, more than I ever made at any job. Preston noticed the time I was spending. "You're on the computer a lot. Is this consulting thing taking over? You're still available for the kids, right?" "Of course. I work while they're at school." "Good. I mean, it's great you have something to do, but family comes first." Family comes first. As if my work was inherently selfish, as if wanting something for myself beyond being Preston's wife and the Caldwell's Golddigger was somehow neglecting my responsibilities. The economy crashed. Preston's wealth management firm struggled. His commissions dropped. He came home stressed, talked about markets, losses, clients panicking. My business grew. Small businesses needed help more than ever, needed to pivot online, needed to reach customers digitally, needed exactly what I was offering. I made $94,000 in 2008. Didn't tell Preston, didn't tell anyone. Just saved it, invested it carefully, built my separate financial foundation. At Thanksgiving that year, the Caldwells discussed the economy like it was a natural disaster happening to them. Preston's father had lost money in the market. Blair's husband's real estate business was struggling. Vaughn was worried about his investments. Nobody asked about my business. Nobody wondered if the economy was affecting my little consulting thing. Because to them, it wasn't real, wasn't significant, just Helena's hobby, her way of keeping busy while living off Caldwell money. Let them think that. While they were worrying about their portfolios shrinking, mine was growing. 2009 and 2010 were pivotal. I hired my first contractor, someone to help with the increasing workload.
Started landing bigger clients, small regional companies, a few mid-sized businesses. My rates increased. My reputation grew. By the end of 2010, Vasquez Consulting had made $140,000 that year. I had a team of 3 contractors, 26 clients, a waiting list. I was 44 years old, and I'd built something real, something profitable, something that proved I wasn't what they said I was. Preston still called it my consulting thing. The Caldwells still didn't know the scope, still thought of me as the woman who'd married their son for money, the gold-digger who'd gotten her payout in 2005 and was now playing businesswoman to feel important. They had no idea that while they had been dismissing me for 16 years, I'd been quietly building the foundation for something they'd never see coming. I wasn't ready to tell them yet. Wasn't ready for the confrontation, the disbelief, the accusations that I'd somehow done something wrong by succeeding. So I stayed quiet, stayed small in their eyes, let them think whatever they needed to think. But I knew I was just getting started, and they had no idea what was coming.
Between 2010 and 2015, everything changed. Not visibly, not in ways Preston or his family could see, but fundamentally, quietly, the way tectonic plates shift beneath the surface before an earthquake. I stopped thinking of Vasquez Consulting as a side business and started treating it like what it actually was, a real company, a growing company, a company that could become something significant if I was willing to push. I was willing. In 2011, I hired my first full-time employee, Sarah, 26 years old, recent graduate, hungry, talented, everything I'd been at that age, except she had someone believing in her from day one, me. Preston met her once when she came to the house to drop off documents. "You hired someone? For your consulting thing?" "Yes, business is growing. I need help." "Huh." He looked confused, like he couldn't quite reconcile the idea that my hobby required an actual employee. "Well, that's great. Must be doing well." Must be doing well. Not asking how well, not wanting numbers, not expressing real interest beyond polite acknowledgement, just assuming whatever I was doing was nice, but ultimately unimportant compared to his real work at the wealth management firm. I made $230,000 in 2011. Didn't tell him. By 2012, I had 3 full-time employees and was looking at something I'd never considered before: acquisition. There were smaller digital marketing agencies struggling in the post-recession economy. Good people, decent client lists, but poor management, no vision, no understanding of how to scale. I understood. I'd been scaling for 6 years, methodically, carefully, building systems and processes and a reputation for delivering results that made clients stay and refer others. In June 2012, I acquired my first agency, a small firm in Evanston. 4 employees, 23 clients. Purchase price? $350,000. Money I had. Money I'd saved and invested from 6 years of profits Preston didn't know existed. The acquisition doubled my client base overnight, created infrastructure I'd been building toward, gave me office space outside my home, made Vasquez Consulting something that couldn't be dismissed as a hobby anymore. Except Preston still did. "You bought another company? Honey, that's ambitious. Are you sure you can handle that?" "I'm sure." "Just don't overextend. I don't want you stressed, and the kids still need you." The kids were teenagers. Emma was 13, Michael was 10. They needed me less than they ever had, but Preston needed me to be needed. Needed me to be the wife whose real job was home and family, not the woman building a business empire in the margins of her marriage. I made $840,000 in 2012. Didn't tell him. The Caldwells remained oblivious. Christmas 2012, Constance asked if I was still doing my little computer work. "Yes, still consulting." "How nice that you have something to keep you occupied. Preston said you even hired some people. Playing boss must be fun." Playing boss.
as if leadership was a game, as if managing employees and serving clients and growing revenue was make-believe, a hobby for a woman who had nothing better to do with her time. Blair was more direct. "Helena, why are you still working? Preston makes plenty. Don't you think it's time to focus on being there for your family? You're not getting any younger. Enjoy your life." Enjoy your life. As if working wasn't part of my life. As if building something wasn't enjoying. As if their idea of what I should be doing mattered more than what I actually wanted. I smiled, nodded, changed the subject. Let them think whatever made them comfortable, because confronting them served no purpose. They'd decided who I was 20 years ago. Nothing I said would change that. Only results would. And I wasn't ready to show results yet. 2013 and 2014 were explosive growth years. I acquired 2 more agencies, built a team of 18, moved into a larger office space in downtown Evanston, signed contracts with mid-sized regional companies, started getting noticed in Chicago business circles. Preston noticed the time I was gone. "You're at the office a lot lately. Is everything okay? Do you need to pull back?" "Everything's fine. Business is growing. That requires time." "I guess. I just miss you. Feels like you're always working." I'd been married to him for nearly 20 years. He'd worked 60-hour weeks for most of them. Never once asked if he should pull back. Never questioned whether his career was taking too much time. But me? My work was optional, negotiable. Something I should sacrifice if it inconvenienced him. I'll be home for dinner, always home for dinner, always available for the kids, always maintaining the appearance of the wife his family expected me to be, while building something they couldn't imagine. I made $1.4 million in 2014, put most of it into investments, real estate, index funds, building wealth that existed completely separate from Preston and his family and their money and their judgments. Then 2015 happened. 2 significant events that shifted everything. In March 2015, Preston was let go from his wealth management position. Not laid off, fired, for underperformance, for losing clients, for not adapting to changing markets, for being, fundamentally, mediocre at a job he'd only gotten through family connections in the first place. He came home that Tuesday, devastated, sat at the kitchen table, put his head in his hands. "They let me go." I sat down across from him. "I'm sorry, what happened?" He looked at me. Really looked at me. Maybe for the first time in years. "I don't know what I'm going to do, Helena. I'm 50 years old. I've been at that firm for 20 years. Who's going to hire me?" "You'll find something. You have experience, connections." "Do I? Most of my clients came through my father, and he's been retired for years. His connections are old, outdated. I don't know if I can do this. Start over." I reached across the table, held his hand. Felt something I hadn't expected to feel. Pity. Not satisfaction, not vindication. Just pity for a man who'd never had to fight for anything and now had no idea how. "We'll be fine," I said. "Money isn't a problem. I know. The inheritance, the investments, we have enough. But still, I feel useless." Useless. The word hung in the air. I'd felt useless for 20 years under his family's judgment. Now he felt it after 1 job loss. The irony wasn't lost on me. "You're not useless. You'll figure this out." He didn't. Not really. He interviewed half-heartedly, talked about opportunities that never materialized, collected unemployment, slowly accepted that at 50, without real drive or hunger for skills that mattered in a changing economy, he wasn't going to find another position that paid what he'd been making. By fall 2015, he'd essentially retired, not officially, just stopped looking. Spent his days playing golf, reading, existing comfortably on the investments and inheritance he'd always had as a safety net. Meanwhile, I made $2 million in 2015. Vasquez Consulting was no longer a consulting firm. It was an agency, a real agency with 24 employees, 73 clients, and a reputation for excellence that had me turning down business because we were at capacity. Preston knew I was busy, knew the business was doing well, but he had no concept of the scale. No concept that his wife, the woman his family had called a gold digger for 20 years, was now the primary breadwinner, was now wealthier than he'd ever been from working, was now carrying our family financially in ways he couldn't see because he'd never bothered to look closely. The second significant event of 2015 happened in November. Preston's dad had a stroke. Serious. Life-altering. The family gathered at the hospital. Constance, Blair, Vaughn, Preston, and me. In the waiting room, Blair made a comment. Offhand, cruel in the casual way she'd perfected over 2 decades. At least Preston doesn't have to worry about money. With Dad's medical bills, this would be devastating if Preston was still the sole provider. Good thing he has investments to fall back on. She didn't even look at me when she said it. Didn't acknowledge that I existed as anything other than Preston's dependent, his burden, the woman who had trapped him 20 years ago and had been living off him ever since. I didn't correct her. Didn't say a word. Just sat there, quiet, small. The role I'd been playing for 2 decades. But something shifted in that waiting room. Some final internal barrier broke, because I was done being invisible, done letting them define me, done hiding what I'd built because they weren't capable of seeing it anyway. I was 49 years old, I'd been called a gold digger for 20 years, I'd built a $2 million business in silence. I'd become financially successful beyond anything Preston had achieved through his family connections and trust fund. And they had no idea. But they were about to.
The 5 years between 2015 and 2020 were when everything inverted, when the reality of our financial situation became the exact opposite of what Preston's family believed, when I stopped being dependent and became the foundation, when Preston stopped being the provider and became the provided for. None of them noticed, not immediately, not obviously, because I didn't announce it, didn't make declarations, just kept working, kept building, kept letting them believe whatever made them comfortable. By 2016, Vasquez Consulting had become something I hadn't anticipated. Valuable. Not just profitable, but genuinely valuable to potential buyers. I'd built systems, processes, a reputation, a client retention rate of 94%, the kind of business that attracted attention from larger agencies and private equity firms looking to acquire proven performers. I started getting offers, unsolicited. People wanted to buy what I'd built. The first serious offer came in early 2017, $4.2 million for the original Vasquez Consulting entity. I turned it down, not because it wasn't good money, but because I wasn't finished building yet. Preston noticed the increased attention. Someone called the house yesterday asking for you, said something about acquisition interest. What was that about? Just someone interested in buying the business. Your consulting thing? Someone wants to buy it? He looked genuinely surprised. How much? A few million. Million? Helena, that's... He stopped, processed. Wait, your business is worth millions? Apparently. I had no idea. That's incredible. I mean, I knew you were busy, but I didn't realize it was that successful. He paused. Are you going to sell? Not yet. I'm building something bigger first. He didn't ask what, didn't press for details, just accepted it, and went back to his retirement, his golf games, his comfortable existence funded by inheritance he'd done nothing to earn. Meanwhile, I kept scaling, acquired a 4th agency in 2017, expanded into content marketing and SEO services, built the team to 38 employees. Revenue hit $3.7 million that year. And I started planning the big move, the sale that would change everything. In 2018, I sold my primary agency to a national marketing firm for $12 million. $12 million for a business I'd started 12 years earlier with zero capital and a laptop. for something Preston's family had dismissed as a hobby, for work they'd called playing consultant. The sale closed in August 2018. The money hit my account. After taxes and fees, I walked away with $8.4 million. Money that was entirely, completely, legally mine. I didn't tell Preston the exact amount. When he asked how the sale went, I said it went well. When he asked how much, I said enough to make it worthwhile. He assumed it was maybe $1 million, maybe $2 million. Something nice, but not life-changing. Not money that actually mattered compared to his trust fund. He had no idea that his wife now had more liquid capital than his entire trust fund had ever held. No idea that the gold digger his family had accused me of being was now worth more than any of them. I immediately reinvested, starting Vasquez Digital, a new agency focused on emerging platforms and younger demographics. Put $2 million into the new venture. Invested $3 million in real estate, buying rental properties in up-and-coming Chicago neighborhoods. Put the rest in diversified investments managed by advisors who had nothing to do with Preston or his family or their world. Preston's financial situation, meanwhile, was quietly deteriorating. Not catastrophically, not in ways that affected our lifestyle, but his trust fund, which had always seemed infinite, was showing its limits. He'd been spending freely for 25 years. Nice cars, country club memberships, expensive hobbies. Supporting a lifestyle that assumed money would always be there. But compound that spending over decades, add in a market downturn in 2008 that he'd never really recovered from, subtract the income he'd been earning until 2015, and the trust fund that had seemed inexhaustible was looking finite. He started making comments in 2019. Offhand. Casual. Maybe we should look at our expenses. The property taxes on this house are getting ridiculous. We're fine. Because we were. My income from the new agency, plus returns on my investments, plus rental property revenue meant we were more than fine. But he didn't know that. Didn't know the mortgage was being paid from my accounts, that the property taxes came from my money, that his trust fund wasn't funding our life anymore. I was. The Caldwells were struggling too. Not publicly, not in ways they'd admit, but I saw the signs. Blair's husband had lost his real estate business in 2008 and never recovered. She'd gone back to work in 2017, something she'd sworn she'd never do, something she'd judged me for doing. Vaughn's investments had underperformed for years. He'd made risky bets that hadn't paid off, started talking about downsizing, about simplifying. Constance's lifestyle hadn't changed, but the money funding it was running out. Preston's father's medical bills from the 2015 stroke were enormous. Even with insurance, the ongoing care was expensive. The wealth that had seemed endless was proving very, very finite. Preston asked me for money in late 2019. Not directly, not admitting that's what he was doing, but asking nonetheless. Helena, would you mind covering the mortgage this month? My dividend payment is delayed. I'll pay you back. Of course. I paid it. Knew he'd never pay me back. Knew it wasn't delayed dividends. Knew his trust fund was running low and he didn't want to admit it. It happened again in January 2020, February, March. By April, I was paying everything. Mortgage, property taxes, insurance, groceries, everything. Preston's trust fund was essentially tapped out. The safety net was gone. And he didn't tell his family, didn't admit to his mother or his siblings that he was broke, that his wife was supporting him, that the gold digger they had accused of being after his money was now worth more than any of them. He asked me not to mention it. Can we keep this between us? I don't want my mother worrying. Of course. I didn't want to tell Constance either. Not yet. Not until I was ready. Not until the moment was right. By late 2020, my net worth was approximately $18 million. The new agency was generating $2.4 million annually. My real estate portfolio was worth $5 million. My investments had grown. I'd built everything Preston's family said I couldn't. Everything they'd accused me of wanting to steal from them. And I'd done it while they continued to treat me like I was nothing, like I was lucky to have married Preston, like I should be grateful for the Coldwell money that, unbeknownst to them, no longer existed in any meaningful way. Preston was living entirely off my income. His mother was running out of medical care. Blair was working a job she resented. Vaughn was downsizing his life. The Caldwell fortune, the old Chicago money, the wealth they'd been so worried I would steal, was disappearing. Not because of me, because of them, because they'd never learned to earn, to build, to create value. They'd only known how to spend, to coast, to live off money someone else had made generations ago. And now, it was gone. And I was the only one in the family who had money. The irony was so perfect, it almost hurt. They just didn't know it yet.
The pandemic changed everything for everyone. For most people, it meant loss, jobs, income, security. For me, it meant acceleration. Businesses that had resisted digital transformation were suddenly forced online overnight. They needed help, desperately. Vasquez Digital was positioned perfectly. We pivoted fast, offered remote consulting, virtual strategy sessions, digital-first solutions for companies that had no choice but to adapt or die. Revenue doubled in 2020, tripled in 2021. By 2022, Vasquez Digital was generating $5.8 million annually, bigger than the first agency had ever been, more profitable, more valuable. The offers started coming again, larger firms, private equity. Everyone wanted a piece of what we'd built. This time, I was ready to sell. In June 2022, I sold Vasquez Digital for $18 million. After taxes and fees, I walked away with just over $12 million. Combined with the previous sale, the real estate portfolio, and investment growth, my net worth hit $23 million. $23 million! More than Preston's entire family had ever been worth at their peak. More than the company sale in 2005 had brought them. More than Constance's old money and Preston's trust fund and all their inherited wealth combined had ever actually been. I was 56 years old, and I'd built something they'd said was impossible. Done something they'd accused me of wanting to steal rather than create. Preston knew I'd sold the agency, knew it was significant, but when he asked the number, I deflected. It's complicated with earnouts and equity structures, but we're comfortable. We're comfortable. The understatement of the century. We were more than comfortable. We were wealthy, but the wealth was mine, every dollar. And Preston was living off it entirely now, had been for 3 years. His trust fund was gone, his inheritance mostly spent. He hadn't earned income since 2015. For 7 years, I'd been the sole provider, the breadwinner, the one carrying our family financially. And he still introduced me at events as my wife, Helena, with no mention of what I did. Still let people assume he supported me. Still didn't correct anyone who thought I was lucky to have married into the Caldwell family. Because admitting the truth meant admitting he'd failed. That his family's money had run out. That he'd become exactly what they'd accused me of being, dependent. Living off someone else, unable to provide for himself. The reckoning came in March 2023. Preston's father passed away. Quietly, peacefully, after 8 years of declining health following the stroke. The funeral was large, expensive, the kind of send-off the Caldwells believed they deserved. Except they couldn't afford it. Not anymore. 2 weeks after the funeral, Constance called. Not me, Preston. I heard his side of the conversation from the kitchen. "Mom, slow down. What's wrong?" Silence while she talked. "How much?"
More silence. $500,000? Mom, I don't have that. His voice cracked, desperate, embarrassed. The medical bills weren't covered? I thought Dad had insurance. She was talking, explaining. I could hear her voice through the phone. Shrill, panicked. Constance Caldwell, who'd never worried about money in her 87 years, was panicking about money. Mom, I can't. My trust fund it's gone. It's been gone. I don't have $500,000. I don't have anything. Silence. Long silence. I imagined her face, the realization, the shock. What do you mean gone? Her voice loud enough now that I could hear actual words. I mean, spent. Over the years. Investments that didn't perform. Expenses, life. It's been depleted for years. Helena's been covering our expenses.
I froze. He'd said it, finally, after 3 years of asking me to keep it quiet, of not wanting his mother to know. He'd admitted it. Your wife has been paying your bills? Constance's voice sharp, cutting. The gold digger we warned you about has been supporting you? She's not a gold digger, Mom. She never was. She built a business, a successful business. She sold it. She has money, real money, more than I ever had. How much money? Preston looked at me. I'd walked into the room. He covered the phone. She's asking how much you're worth. I took the phone from him. First time I'd spoken directly to Constance in months. Hello, Constance. Helena. Preston says you have money, that you've been supporting him. I need $500,000 for your father-in-law's medical bills. Surely you can help family. The audacity took my breath away. 30 years of gold digger accusations, 3 decades of being treated like I was beneath them, and now, the moment she needed money, I was family. I could help family. No, I said, simply, clearly. Excuse me? I said no. I'm not giving you $500,000. Helena, this is family. Preston's father. You have money. Preston says you sold your little business for quite a bit. Surely you can spare... My little business? I laughed. Actually laughed. Constance, I sold my business for $18 million. The one before that for $12 million. I own $5 million in real estate. I'm worth $23 million. I can spare $500,000. I choose not to. Silence. Complete silence. I could hear her breathing, processing, trying to reconcile what I just said with 30 years of believing I was a gold digger after their money. 23 million? Her voice small, uncertain. That's not possible. It's very possible. I built 2 companies from nothing, sold them both, invested wisely, made money the way people actually make money, by working, by creating value, by building something real. But you were just a gold digger? Yes. You've been calling me that for 30 years. Turns out, I was the only one in this family who knew how to actually make gold. Everyone else just spent it. Helena. Preston's voice. Warning. Trying to stop me. But I was done stopping. Done being quiet. Done letting them define me. Preston has been living off my money for 3 years. Your precious Caldwell fortune? Gone. Blair is working because her husband lost everything. Vaughn is downsizing because his investments failed. Your medical bills are bankrupting you. The family wealth you were so worried I'd take, you spent it all yourselves. You can't speak to me like this. I'm Preston's mother. And I'm the woman you called a gold digger for 30 years? The woman you excluded, humiliated, treated like garbage, and now you want my help? My money? The money you said I was always after? No, absolutely not. You can figure it out the way I had to,
without family money, without help, on your own. I hung up, handed the phone back to Preston. He looked devastated, caught between his mother and his wife, between the family that raised him and the woman who'd been supporting him. Helena, she's my mother. She's in trouble. She's been cruel to me for 30 years. I don't owe her anything. She's family. She never treated me like family. I was always the outsider, the gold digger. Well, now the gold digger has all the gold, and she's keeping it. The phone call with Constance detonated like a bomb. Within hours, my phone started ringing. Blair first, then Vaughn, each with their own version of damage control. Blair's call came that same evening. Sweet voice, fake concern. The tone she'd perfected over 30 years of passive-aggressive cruelty. Helena, I just talked to Mother. She's very upset. I think there was some miscommunication about Dad's medical expenses. I'm sure we can work this out as a family. There was no miscommunication. Your mother asked for $500,000. I said no. Helena, I understand you're angry. Mother can be difficult, but this is about Dad, about family obligations. Preston said you've done very well with your business ventures. Surely you can help. Business ventures. As if I'd been dabbling, playing entrepreneur, not building companies from nothing while they spent inherited wealth they'd never earned. Blair, for 30 years you've called me a gold digger, treated me like I was beneath you, made sure I knew I wasn't really family, and now you want my money? Now I'm supposed to have family obligations? That was all a misunderstanding. We never meant... You meant every word, every look, every exclusion. You meant all of it, and I remember all of it. Silence. Then her voice changed, harder. The real Blair underneath the fake sweetness. So that's it. You're going to let an old woman lose her home over some hurt feelings from years ago. Your mother isn't losing her home over hurt feelings. She's losing her home because your family spent everything. That's not my problem. That's yours. I hung up, blocked her number. Vaughn called next morning. He'd always been the quiet one, the one who never said much but never defended me either, complicit through silence. Helena, it's Vaughn. I know things have been complicated, but we're family. Mom really needs help. The medical bills are crushing her. Dad's care wiped out everything. Where were you, Vaughn, all those years when your mother called me a gold digger? When Blair made sure I knew I didn't belong? Where were you? I didn't agree with how they treated you. But you never said anything. Never stood up for me. Never told them they were wrong. You just sat there, silent, letting it happen. I'm asking now, please, help my mother. No. Helena, please, she's 87 years old. She's 87 years old and spent 30 years treating me like garbage. I'm not rewarding that behavior with $500,000. Goodbye, Vaughn. 3 days later, Constance demanded a family meeting, sent Preston a formal message through email. Dinner at the Lake Forest estate, Saturday evening, attendance mandatory. Preston looked at me across the breakfast table. Will you come? Do you want me to? I don't know. She's asking for the whole family. I think she wants to talk about Dad's estate, the finances, everything. And she wants me there so she can pressure me in person, so the whole family can guilt me into giving her money. Maybe? Probably? But Helena, she's my mother, and she's in trouble, real trouble. I'd never seen Preston look so defeated, so caught. 58 years old and still unable to choose between his mother's approval and his wife's dignity. I'll come, I said, not for Constance, not for the family that had rejected me, but because this needed to end. 30 years of being small, being quiet, being the woman they thought I was. It needed to end with me standing in that house, in front of them all, and telling them exactly who I'd become. Saturday arrived. We drove to Lake Forest in silence. The estate looked exactly as it had 28 years ago when I'd first walked through that door. Same circular driveway, same columns, same intimidating grandeur. But I wasn't the same, not even close. Constance answered the door. Older, frailer, but her eyes were still sharp, still cold. "Helena, Preston, come in." Blair was already there, sitting in the formal living room with her husband David, Vaughn and his wife Patricia, everyone arranged like a tribunal, like an intervention. We sat. Constance remained standing, positioning herself as the matriarch, the authority, the one in control. "I've gathered you all here to discuss the family's financial situation. As you know, Preston's father's medical expenses were substantial, more substantial than we anticipated. The estate has been depleted. There are outstanding bills exceeding $400,000. She looked around the room. Everyone avoided eye contact. "I'm asking each of you to contribute what you can. As family, this is what families do." Blair spoke first. "Mother, you know David and I are stretched thin. The business hasn't recovered. We're barely covering our own expenses. I wish we could help." Vaughn nodded. "Same here. Patricia and I have been downsizing. We don't have that kind of liquidity." Constance's eyes landed on me. "Helena, Preston tells me you've been very successful, that you've sold your business for a considerable amount." I met her gaze, held it, didn't flinch. $23 million, Constance. That's what I'm worth. Preston told you that on the phone." The room went silent. Blair's mouth opened slightly. Vaughn looked at the floor. Everyone processing the number they'd never imagined. $23 million? Blair repeated, voice flat, disbelieving. "Yes, built from nothing. 2 companies, both sold, plus real estate and investments. All mine." "And you won't help your husband's mother? After everything this family has given you?" I laughed, actually laughed, stood up, looked at each of them. "Given me? What exactly did this family give me? Constance, you called me a gold digger the day we met. You wore black to my wedding. You excluded me from family decisions, from heirlooms, from everything that mattered. You made sure I knew every day for 30 years that I wasn't good enough, that I was only there for money. Blair, you were worse. The snide comments, the fake sweetness covering real cruelty, making sure everyone knew I was beneath you, that I didn't belong. Vaughn, you said nothing, did nothing, let it all happen. For 30 years, you treated me like I was worthless, like I was lucky Preston married me, like I should be grateful for access to Caldwell money. And now you want my money? The money I made? The money I earned while you spent everything your family ever had? No, absolutely not." "Helena." Preston's voice, quiet, pleading. I turned to him. "Preston, I love you, but I will not give your family money. Not after this. Not after everything." Constance's face hardened. "Then I think we're done here. If you won't help family, you're not family. Preston, you'll have to choose." "Mother, don't—" "Choose. Your wife or your family. Your mother who raised you, or the woman who's keeping money from us when we need it most." The room held its breath, everyone looking at Preston, waiting to see what he'd do, who he'd choose. After 28 years of marriage, it came down to this moment. Preston looked at me, looked at his mother, stood slowly. "Mom, I choose Helena. I should have chosen her 30 years ago, when you first called her a gold digger. I should have defended her then, stood up for her. I didn't. I let you treat her terribly. I was wrong, and I'm sorry." He took my hand. "I'm choosing my wife." I looked at Constance, at Blair, at Vaughn, at the family that had spent 30 years making me feel small. "Goodbye," I said, walked out. Preston followed. We drove home in silence. Later that night, Preston spoke. "What happens now?" "Now, you figure out how to live with your choice, and I keep my money. All of it." The weeks after the confrontation were quiet. Preston and I didn't talk about it much. There wasn't much to say. He'd made his choice. I'd made mine years ago.
Now we were both living with the consequences. Constance didn't call. Neither did Blair or Vaughn. The silence was its own kind of statement. 30 years of demanding my presence at holidays and family gatherings, and now, nothing. I'd been excommunicated, officially not family. It didn't hurt the way they probably thought it would. I heard through mutual acquaintances what was happening to them. Small town connections, people who knew people, the kind of gossip network that the wealthy never think applies to them until it does. Blair sold her house in July, the big house in Winnetka she'd been so proud of, downsized to a condo, started working full-time at a marketing firm, 54 years old and back in the workforce after years of looking down on women who worked. The irony was delicious. Constance lost the Lake Forest estate in September, couldn't keep up with property taxes and maintenance, moved into assisted living. Not the luxury kind with gardens and concierge service, the regular kind. The kind covered by Medicaid because she'd run out of money. 87 years old and living in the type of facility she would have been horrified by a decade earlier. Vaughn declared bankruptcy in October. His investments had completely collapsed. Lost his house. Moved into a rental with Patricia. Started driving for a rideshare service to make ends meet. 60 years old. From trust fund to Uber driver. I felt no satisfaction in their struggles, no vindication. Just a quiet sense of completion. They'd spent their entire lives believing wealth was something you inherited, something you were entitled to, something that would always be there. They'd never learned to build, to earn, to create value. And when the inherited wealth ran out, they had nothing to fall back on. No skills, no drive, no ability to start over. Preston struggled with it more than I did. They were his family. His mother in assisted living, his sister working a job she resented, his brother broke. He wanted to help them. I could see it in his face every time someone mentioned their names. "You could help them," he said one evening in November. Carefully, not pushing, just observing. "I could, but you won't." "No." "Because of how they treated you." "Because they haven't apologized, haven't acknowledged what they did, haven't admitted they were wrong." "They just want money. And I'm not a bank. I'm the woman they called a gold digger for 30 years. If they want my help, they need to start by admitting they were wrong about me. All of it. Every accusation, every insult, every moment they made me feel worthless." Preston nodded. Didn't argue. He understood, even if it hurt. "Have they reached out to you?" I asked. "My mother did, once. Asked me to talk to you, to convince you. I told her I wouldn't, that it was her job to make things right, not mine." "What did she say?" "That she'd rather lose everything than apologize to you. That she still believes you married me for money. That your success doesn't change that." There it was, after everything. After watching me build 2 companies, after seeing me reach a net worth that exceeded anything the Caldwells had ever achieved, after living off my income for years, Constance still believed I was a gold digger. Still couldn't admit she'd been wrong. "Then she's chosen her pride over her family," I said. "That's not my problem." Preston's relationship with his family fractured, but didn't break completely. He called his mother occasionally, checked on Blair and Vaughn, but he didn't visit, didn't involve me, kept that part of his life separate. It was the compromise we'd found. He could maintain contact, I could maintain distance. For me, the second half of 2023 was about building something new. I'd sold both companies,
had more money than I'd ever need, but I wasn't interested in retirement. I started angel investing, funding women-led startups, companies founded by women who'd been told they couldn't, who'd been underestimated, dismissed. I knew those women. I'd been those women. By December, I'd invested in 8 companies, put $3 million to work funding the next generation of businesses, found purpose in helping others build what I'd built, prove what I'd proven. Preston and I were good. Better than we'd been in years, actually. Without his family's constant judgment, without the pressure to be someone I wasn't, our marriage found space to breathe, to be what it should have been all along. A partnership, equal, respectful. He'd chosen me. Finally. After 28 years. It wasn't perfect. It didn't erase the decades of not defending me, but it was something. A start. And for now, that was enough.